All right, everybody, welcome back to Founders Academy. Today, I have, again, another beautiful guest for you guys, two of them, the Boyko family. I've actually known Jana for a very long time. We decided on a decade, but I'm pretty sure it's been longer.
Yeah, I think so.
And we also have Brad as well. They have actually started this Bedside Business Plan book, which I think is probably one of the best books I've ever had to the privilege of reading for startups. And what it does is it really breaks it down to how to think about your business and where to start. So welcome the Boyko family. How you guys doing? Am I saying the last name right?
Boyko.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
No,
All right,
absolutely.
good.
Happy
All
to
right,
be here.
I'm saying it and no one says anything. I'm just like, did I say that right?
Yeah, you
My
got
last
it.
name is tough, so.
Oh, yeah, we won't try that.
No, we shouldn't. So, you guys, I know, Jana, it was your, child. It was your idea.
Yeah.
So tell me, where did it start? How did it start?
Yeah, so it really came out of, the private coaching practice that I'd built, business coaching practice, really supporting women in their transition from employee to entrepreneur. So work with a lot of women who are starting companies, but don't always know where to start or, how to take certain steps in the journey. So really, I found that a lot of women were coming to me saying, I want to begin a business, but I just don't know what tools or resources to use. I feel so lost in the process. So really, the idea for Bedside Business Plan came up in my mind, and I thought, well, what if there was a way for someone to journal their business plan and really make business and entrepreneurship a lot more intimidating, and instead actually make it more warm and approachable and more of a life-giving experience that someone can pursue? That's
incredibly interesting to me because what I really love about the book is that not only do you guys break it down per question where it's like, hey, like, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Like, you guys actually break it down. First of all, I went through all of it. I read all the questions.
Oh,
and
we're
they're
honored.
Bang on. No, honestly, they're bang on. Like, if anything, like when we have startups come up to us or founders come to us, literally, if I were to just give them this book, I can literally walk away and be like, when you're done this book, come back to me, and then we have an idea and we can actually follow through with it. So that's what I really love about it, because you and I, Jana, we've had these conversations where we're like, it's so tough for people, but it shouldn't be as tough as it is, right?
Exactly. No, and that was totally it. It's like, how do we make entrepreneurship for everyone? How do we make it more accessible? How do we make it so that people can actually get their dreams off the ground, as opposed to feeling stuck on that first step where it's like, what do I actually do with this idea? Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've actually said it in this podcast multiple times. I find startups and like founders, it's like jumping off of a cliff. Mm-hmm. You're gonna die. Okay, but the question is, how fast can you build that plane to be able to not crash?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it, is like, you have all the pieces that you can put together, but you're like falling at the same time. So you better put it together as fast as possible before you crash.
There's a lot to figure out. Yeah.
So that's what I love about this book. Now, Brad, I know you've been working with your sister for a while now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's helped you with a couple of startups. So how did you get involved?
Yeah, so from like the beginning, and I know we only have probably 30 minutes here, so we'll spark
We have
notes
as much time as you want. Don't you worry.
Excellent. Well, Jana and I have always, as siblings, we've always wanted to start a business together. And over the last, I'd say...
By the way, I got to say, that is very unique.
Very rare.
Most siblings are not as close as you two.
No,
well, she's
but it
good
works
at what
great.
I'm not good at. So it works
we
really
fill
well,
in the perfect
actually.
gaps. We trust each other. We get along. So
My God, what
works.
did your parents do? Bless your parents, honestly. Wow.
We'll bring them into the next
I was good.
Yeah.
Can we have them on the podcast and how to raise kids? Because that was perfect. All right, okay.
Yeah, so, we've always loved entrepreneurships and startups, and we have to thank our dad for that, I think, of course. But, we've typically more so been in the service style of startup and businesses, and we've had some success there. And really, we've had some smaller projects together, but we really wanted to find a way to collaborate fully. And also, it'd be a product business. That's something that we wanted to tackle. And, as I watched Jana's success with her coaching practice, all of her business, and no bias here, the feedback you were getting on your clients was phenomenal. Like, you would just share some of the stories to me. I think that's insane. And, you know, typically a coaching practice is not, well, it can be a little more expensive, one-on-one coaching, right?
Oh, 100%.
So really, we're like, how do we take this experience that, you know, you have and some of the stuff that I've done, create it accessible to everyone and be approachable for everyone? Those are the biggest keys. So how did we do that? And through that and some decisions and lots of work, of course, Bedside Business Plan came to life. But that was really a lot of pieces like from our individual lives coming together and really just seamlessly fitting and then taking one step at a time. And now we have a physical journal.
Yeah. And I remember too, even being in a coffee shop in Kensington, and I'd had this idea like rumbling around in my brain for quite some time. And we were really sort of keeping an eye on what was happening in like the journal and book space as well. Like we noticed that guided journals were really becoming a thing and really starting to explode. So we were looking at that. We were looking at the experiences I was having with my clients. And I remember just telling you about this idea for this journal in a coffee shop, and you immediately loved it.
Yeah.
And right after we were in the coffee shop, we went out to your car. I remember it was like, I think it was cold. We were in your SUV, and we were trying to brainstorm a name for the journal. And like the words Bedside Business Plan, I swear, just like dropped into my brain. And I was like, Brad, what do you think of this name? And I think we both just like loved the idea for the product from the beginning. We knew we were solving a real problem. And then from there, it was just like, okay, how do we get this off the ground?
So I'll tell you my experience of why I love dealing with startups is because of exactly what you just said. The pure passion that comes from like this, like I'm getting goosebumps.
I don't see my hairs on my arms are standing up.
It's just like, oh my God. Like, it's just like even the experience of the naming, you know what I mean? It's like one of those things where it just clicks and it's like, yes, that's the one. And like just the feeling and the emotions, like everything that goes into it. I think a lot of people, you know, first of all, I always say entrepreneurs are crazy, right? Like you have to be, you cannot, you know, right? You know, jumping off of a cliff and trying to build that plane, right? Before you crash. Like you have to be crazy enough to take that leap. But you also have to really embrace the experience and the journey that it takes you. Because it truly is a roller coaster of an experience. I always like, you know, it's the peaks and the valleys. Right? And you always have to, the values is where you really got to show your grit.
Totally.
Right? And you really got to push through it. Because there's always, so I'll tell you, you guys tell me what your experience was. But my experience was, you know, you get your product going, you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire. Right? It's like, I got this. Then you don't get a customer. And then it plummets down to the ground, right? And it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do, right? And you get your first client, you're like, I'm up, I'm going for the million, right? And then it just has these valleys and peaks where I find startups, that's where they struggle the most is the valleys. And that's what I like about this is because you guys actually kind of plan out the valleys, which I really like as well.
Yeah, and I think something that's really unique about this journal as well is how we incorporate the entrepreneur into it. So something that I found that I was witnessing a lot in the startup space was that people would start building their companies, they'd start hustling, and they would really leave themselves behind. And then 5 years in, you know, they'd be like, I can't do this anymore. I'm completely burnt out. And so I really thought, you know, we talk about this as well, is it's like, how do we reintroduce, you know, our own humanity into the business plans that we create? Because up until this point, like I have never seen a business plan that asks you questions as the entrepreneur about, you know, what's success really going to look and feel like for you? How do you actually want your days to go? Like, how are you going to support yourself financially as you build your company, right? How is this going to be sustainable? And so, I think, that's sort of a really interesting piece that we've tackled is how do we really humanize this process for people so that it's not like you are, you know, running by the seat of your pants and constantly overwhelmed, but you're creating a more conscious relationship with this business that you're building.
So you, Brad, have done multiple startups. You've coached startups. So what would you give the first advice, or not even advice, but like your biggest experience or your learnings that you've gotten from your experiences?
You know what?
Including Bedside, by the way, because this is its own business, right?
Yeah, so it is.
Like you guys had to go through the production process. That's a startup. That's on its own, right? So what was your experience? What, like, if you're to talk to our founders right now, what would be, you know, everybody always has an opinion, like, don't do this, don't do that. What was your experience on that?
You know what? And we might even have different answers for this, but for me, it really is persistence and execution. So I've been a part of, like, you know, we've had some success with Bedside Business Plan. In the past, I've been a part of, or tried to be a part of some startups that have failed. And ultimately, it's because the notion of one step in front of the other to keep taking steps just ultimately falls flat. So,
you know, a million ways to fail.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, even as you're falling, I think your analogy was jumping off a cliff and you got a flap to get going. It's one flap at a time for that, because really, like, you know, that's what it takes, one at a time, to really get your wings off and fly. Just to play back on that, but that's been it.
I love you said that, because, you know, with New Automations, my previous company, right, I had a lot of successes there, right, thankfully.
Yeah.
So that really what set me up for what it is. But to be frank, Corridor 1.0, the failure of that, I learned 10 times,
Totally.
20 times more
Yeah.
than I ever did with New Automations as a success.
Yeah.
Right? So I always say that to people. I'm like, successful people know how to do it right, maybe 2 or 3 ways. But the people who have failed 2 or 3 times, they know a million ways not to do it.
Yeah.
So they're a lot more primed for success, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because they've learned, right?
Yeah.
How do
Oh,
we
yeah.
walk? We fall a bunch of times before we walk, right? As kids.
Right.
So
And you get more creative.
you get more creative.
You know, and I think entrepreneurship is a really interesting practice in creativity. It's like, how can you solve this problem? How can you find the next door to knock on? How can you find your way through? It's sort of like the thrill of the hunt, which I love.
Some love, some hate.
Yeah, totally.
Depends if you're a salesperson. I find that, like, one of the biggest things is founders need to be salespeople.
Yeah.
Like, you honestly have to have that as your personality type, especially if you're non-technical. You have to be able to sell your brand, your product, your vision, right? Every step of the way, you're somehow selling it.
Yeah.
And that's why I always tell people, stick to your passion.
You got to love it.
You gotta love
You have
it.
to.
Because
Yeah.
you can't sell it otherwise.
Yeah.
How can
Yeah.
you sell something you don't love? Unless
Yeah.
you're a really douchey salesperson. Then you'll be able to do it. But,
Right.
most people will read through that.
Yeah, and that's what we find too, like even when we do our book signings at Indigo and things like that, like we just really show up super authentically. Like we absolutely love what we've created, and I think we've put so much meticulous attention into like designing the cover and designing the pages and designing the questions in like such a way. Yeah, it was like very precise in terms of how we worked on it. But I think because we spent so much time and took so much care and attention, you know, over the product, we're able to actually like sell it in air quotes in a way that's really just us talking about something that we love. And I think people feel that radiating from us, right? Like you can feel when something's a bit off in terms of if someone's trying to pitch you something. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So that matters as well, I think.
So what was your biggest, not failure, because you haven't failed, but what was your biggest struggle when building Bedside?
You know, that's a good question, because to be honest, like we've both been involved in like several different startups at this point, and this journal has honestly, like I can say, come together pretty seamlessly, even in terms of like our milestones and achievements. Like there hasn't been any major like catastrophic failure. But I would even say like in the past, like I collaborated with different people or had different partnerships that weren't totally in alignment and didn't end up working out. Again, those failures that really teach you a thing or two. But I would say it's interesting because from those past experiences, I really learned about business partnerships and what you truly need in a business partner. And I find why it works so well with Brad and I is because we're both very similar in terms of like our vision for success and what we think makes a quality product and how we approach business and how we approach entrepreneurship. But yet we bring like very different skill sets. So we like perfectly fill each other's gaps, but we're very aligned in terms of the integrity of the business and what we want it to become. So I think that was sort of like a historic learning, which has now become a real success in this business. And like even for us, like we don't even have like formal meetings with each other super regularly. Like we've just found our groove where like we can just be on the fly working together. It's super fluid, which is really nice.
Again, we got to praise your parents for that.
And
we got to have them on the podcast. Genuinely, like, you know, I haven't seen too many siblings that have been able to, they get along, of course. Like a lot of siblings get along. They're family, right? But it's tough, like having that business, because business is so different, right? You really do have to trust each other. A lot of communication needs to happen. And siblings, I wouldn't say, are the best at that, right? Communication between one another, right? So how many years apart are you guys?
3 years apart.
3 years apart.
And
okay.
3 days. So
And
our
3 days.
birthdays are so close.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're both
Okay.
Libras.
Libras.
I feel like that makes a difference.
That
yeah.
does. So it has to. There's
Has
no
to,
other way.
right?
No, so that's what's amazing, right? 3 years apart. Like, you know, my wife and her brother, they're 3 years apart, and I can honestly tell you they're worlds apart.
Yeah.
In terms of like attitude and like,
Yep.
you know, so fundamentally they probably would never work out as business partners, right?
Yeah, and I think like as lucky as we are, it goes back to the fundamental principle that like you have to find a good business partner. And luckily enough, she grew up in the same house as I did.
Years of
Years of experience.
I've been vetting her for 2 decades.
Yeah.
No, but you know, I don't know, just the skill sets really complement each other. I
Yeah.
think the trust is really there.
Massive.
So in that sense, we got lucky with just like trust and a good partner. But that could be for any scenario. That was a critical point of us too. There's been points where you've had to carry a ton of workload, or I have based on scheduling and expertise.
Right.
Like I'd say the front end of the business, you were definitely more heavier into Bedside Business Plan, doing most of the writing.
Right,
And
like
then
creating
once-
the product. Yeah.
And then once there was more like, okay, well now we need a financial model. We need to actually build this journal. How do we do that? That's sort of where I came in. And it was never like, oh, I've worked, 8 hours today, like you haven't worked any. It was just about we understood where we fit within the partnership. So there was always like mutual like agreements and respect on just workload and get back to trust, right?
And I think that's what it comes down to, is the trust factor, because
Yeah.
honestly, there's a lot of points where when you, exactly what you said, right? One of the partners will carry the workload.
Yeah.
And that's when things get triggered, because it's like, well, he's not doing enough, or he's, and it's very hard at that point in time to kind of go, okay, but have they done the work in the past? And usually it's a buildup. It's always a buildup.
You got to watch out for those cracks early on, because you start to see, I think, when things aren't quite in alignment, or you start to see some of those cracks in the foundation. But so often we want to ignore it because, okay, well, things are still okay, you know, whatever. But you have to have those really hard conversations, especially in the beginning.
You're looking for the least path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're trying to avoid conflict because you have so much going on the business side.
Right, good point.
It's very challenging to kind of be like, now I got to deal with this.
Yeah.
Now I got to be with so for us at Corridor, for example, we hire quickly and we make sure it's a culture match, but we also fire just as fast. And we have to let people go, because it's kind of one of those scenarios where it's like, okay, I brought you in, and the company grows different stages.
Yeah.
And everyone is good at different stages. So not everyone is great at everything.
Yeah.
Like, Jana, I've reached out to you twice now to try to get you on board with us, right? And that's because of her entrepreneurial spirit, right? And that's what we hire at Corridor, because I'm like very focused around that. Because with the proper nurturing, like, they'll drive the company forward.
Oh, totally.
I love entrepreneurial mindset people.
I think that's a theme for us too. Like an idea, I think you said this best, but like a business idea in a small business is so fragile. So surrounding it with the right team, right culture is critical for success.
So massive.
And one of the things that Jana and I did, and I have to preface this, we're lucky to have an immensely supportive like friendship around us, family, everyone's very encouraging. But we made the decision to really keep Bedside Business Plan between us, bringing in a few people to like help with design, copywriting, a few things, but we didn't tell anyone. And we did that for a couple different reasons.
How long did you guys take before you guys actually got your first production? Not even production, like your first prototype.
I think maybe a year and a half, something
well,
like that.
Wow, okay.
Actually, prototype, I think, like, the writing of the whole journal and, like, the editing process and, like, finessing it, I think took around 8 or 9 months in total. Initially, I was like, I can write this thing in a month. But, of course, it's a process and it's a journey you go on. So I think it was, like, 8 or 9 months of writing. And then it was, getting our initial sample, working with our manufacturer, placing the production order. So I think
during
like
COVID, lead times,
Oh my God!
Shipping.
It
was probably a year and a half to get everything, like to get our first production run. I think is that what you were referring to?
Something around there.
Yeah, but I think we were really efficient with it. But at the same time, it takes time with shipping, with and even a creative process, like writing something and creating something new for the world, like. You have to sort of feel your way into it as well. It's not just like pumping out a bunch of questions. So, it took time for sure.
Well, and you guys were saying that you guys credit your entrepreneur spirit, hence this, with your dad. So what was the what did he do that drove you guys to be on such entrepreneurial spirit kids? Because usually, again, I'll go back to the sibling thing. It's very rare that both are this, like, you know, have the same temperament and are on the same page. Like, that's rare. So I'm just curious, like, what influence did he have for you guys for you guys to be so entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it kind of runs in our family as well. Like blood. Our grandparents, like our blood, but like our grandparents had businesses.
That's the easy answer.
Yeah, blood, exactly. It's in it. It's coded in our cells. But no, like even our grandparents had businesses, and like I feel like our dad was also just had a very entrepreneurial spirit. Like even I remember when we were younger, like he would buy, you know, used lockers and then resell them for more money. Like he just sort of had that innate within him.
Yeah.
And
he was a hustler before hustling became a thing.
He was, yeah. But not in like an intense way.
Yeah.
In like a very like value driven way. He loved connecting with people. He just has this like very jubilant spirit about him.
Yeah. But natural salespeople is what I call that.
Natural salespeople. Yeah, that's what our dad was. And
yeah.
like he also, I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Brad, but yeah, I remember him taking me to like different parts of the city when I was younger, like Inglewood or Kensington, and like we would look around at different small businesses and go inside, and I don't know, developed this like affinity for small business from like a very young age, which was interesting.
Very nice.
But no, I feel like he just, you know, not only from what he did, but also just who he is as a person.
Yeah.
I feel like he very much instilled within us to like create value for people and to create things that the world needs and to sort of find that gap or find that space where your product or service fits. So I think that does a pretty good job of explaining him. Anything to add?
And like, you know, I can remember from a young age too, like, you know, setting up a little like drink or lemonade stand next to the store.
I'm
like,
such a sucker for those.
I know.
Yeah.
Every time I go pay for that, I'm like, damn it.
Yeah.
You're so cute, and I support small businesses.
Good.
And that was back in
Maybe you were our first customer back in the day.
Probably.
Who knows?
Guaranteed. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that was back in the day where like, you know, you'd sell like a can of Coke for like $2 or something, but he would front the cost of like the big case, and at the end he'd be like, okay, well you have to pay me back now for like the case. And I was like, wait, what? Like I just didn't understand that.
Yeah.
I was like,
Dad, why are you taking money from me? Like,
Yeah.
So the reason I asked you that is because my dad also had a huge impact on me, because he's also an entrepreneur himself. So he did his own business, but he's an electrical engineer, right? So he's very focused around problem solving.
Yeah.
So he's less of a charisma. Well, actually, he is quite. He has a lot of charisma with him.
Yeah.
But he's more like solution oriented.
Yeah.
Right. So his first sale, he always tells me this story, where he literally went to so he's an electrical engineer for power grids. So he just walked in and he said, look, I can save you this much money per year because of your maintenance.
Yeah.
I'll install it. If it doesn't work, don't worry about it. And if it does work, then you pay me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? You have to have, you know,
Yeah.
you gotta have confidence to do something like that, right?
Yeah, and I think you're tapping into something that I appreciate so much about entrepreneurship, which is like that old school entrepreneurial gumption or essence. Like that was like us as well, even in terms of getting our journal into Indigo. That was something that we both really wanted to do. And I even remember like taking actual photographs on my phone of the guided journal section at Indigo, and I photoshopped a copy of Bedside Business Plan on those shelves because I was like, that's what we want to work towards. Yeah, and like even when we got our first sample from our manufacturer, it was like actually this time last year in December, it was like a Monday, early December 2021, where I took our first sample and I started just going around to different Indigo locations, talking with whatever managers would speak with me, and it's like, those sort of salt of the earth type experiences are really what I think build incredible businesses, right? It's like that humanity. It's knocking on the doors. It's picking up the phone. It's like telling people, you know, just take a chance on me, or like with your dad, right? It's like, if it doesn't work, you don't have to pay me. But getting creative, and I think just, again, knocking on those doors is what actually makes a big difference.
I think what really bothers me in today's world of startups is that, they don't take this process. They very much are trying to accelerate to being that millionaire without taking the proper, like every startup takes time. And I always tell this to people, and I say, so when you see people on the news nowadays, like they've been working for 5 to 10 years before they hit there, right? So right now, if you look at like Discord is a really good example I use, right? Discord has been around for years. No one knew about it. right? And now they're thriving with users coming on board. Like we use Discord for our business, right? So now they're starting to get enterprise scale, right? But everyone looks at Discord going, oh my God, what did they do like last year?
Yeah.
Like they've been around for years, right? And it's part of that process of like, guys, you're not going to be a millionaire overnight. There is a chance, of course. To be honest with you, startups and founders and entrepreneurship, it's all chance, right? You do have to get lucky at some point, right? And it's so unfortunate because there's so many good people out there that I know that could be great startups or founders, but they just never got lucky.
Yeah.
Right. And lucky could be anything. It could be family support. It could be, a good customer that's all of a sudden sets you up for success. Right. Anything could be lucky. And I do believe that every startup and entrepreneur gets lucky at some point.
Yeah, it's putting yourself in the position.
You have to put
over and over again.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. You have to put yourself in situations so that you can get lucky.
Yeah.
Right. I love that. Exactly. I keep telling people that.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, no, it's hard work. I'm like, absolutely it's hard work. Of course it's hard work.
Yeah.
But you have to put yourself in situations where you will succeed. Otherwise if you just stay at home, I'm going to throw some TikToks on, videos up. Like that's not, you might, I don't know, but it's less likely than a lot of other people that put themselves out there.
Well, totally. And you have to develop the practice of investing in yourself to be in those opportunities too, right? Like again, we can scroll TikTok and you flip up and someone goes, I did $1 million in sales last month. Like, here's how I did it. It's like, you have to take
Why are you
steps.
making a TikTok video
right?
about that?
You know what I
mean? Do it again.
But right? It's like, and like going back to even like the book quickly too, is like, picking up this journal, like on your way out, or, we had some great chats with people who we did a book signing at Indigo. And they came in looking frustrated with their career, just felt at wit's end, and they came in to find a book on how to write a resume so they could get a promotion at this company they weren't happy with. And honestly, they're like brought to tears like when they ran into the journal, but just by passing, they ran into us quickly. And they, right place, right time, bit of luck. You find a resource that works for you. You meet like a good business partner who could help support and scale your business. All those types of things. Certainly relevant in the startup space, but it takes persistence. It takes time. It takes a degree of luck, but investing in yourself is a big one.
I love that.
And everything leads to something. I actually wrote this in my phone today. I don't know why, and now it's coming up again, but I wrote it down. It's like everything leads to something. Like every action you take, everything you do, it's almost like you're depositing like currency in this piggy bank, and it might not pay back initially, but it's like you keep taking the steps, keep depositing, you keep moving forward, something eventually comes, and you learn how to pivot your business, you learn how to better align with the market you're trying to serve, and you just keep going, and things happen.
I have a really good example of that. When I was at New Automations, when I had started New Automations, before that, we used to live in this apartment. Anyways, in that apartment, this lady and this gentleman lived there. They were one of the penthouse owners. And I came down the ramp into the parkade and I turned right, and this woman was just like crying. So I like stopped the car. I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Someone just came through that door and like put a gun to my face." Like,
Whoa.
Like it was intense. And I stayed there until her husband came and the cops came. Just made sure she was okay. That's all. I was just concerned for her. No agenda, no nothing. 5 years later, 6 years later, I start New Automations. And so I go to the first tower to try to sell home automation to them. Guess who was the builder of that tower?
Wow.
This lady.
No
That's
way.
Chills
And her
again.
husband, yes.
Wow.
So to them, they were like, "Oh my God, like I know you from where?" I'm like, "You're that lady."
Oh my gosh.
And they were like,
wow.
"Oh, that's right." And got my first project.
Wow.
And that's piggy banking, right? That's the pig, like that's literally like I had no purpose. I have nothing but just concern for her. And all of a sudden, 5 years later, massive paycheck that actually set new automations up for success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and it's like things can come out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
You know, and I
Who
think
would've
we have to
thought?
be open to it though, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we are like, yes, entrepreneurship takes time, but also sometimes we're really stuck on this fact that it's hard, it's a grind, it's going to take me years. But also things can come out of left field. Like opportunities can present themselves. You can have this light bulb moment. You can change directions. Like
Absolutely.
there's so much possibilities. So I
Yeah.
think staying open to that is also really important. Okay, so in terms of do, I tell this to all the entrepreneurs I work with, but it's start your business by starting with yourself. So your needs, your values, your boundaries, be really clear on those things. And then in terms of don't, I would say don't compromise yourself or your integrity or your well-being for your business, and that will be, you know, of higher service to your business then.
And I feel like if you don't do that, it's a long-term gain.
Yeah.
Versus when a lot of people do that, it's usually for a short-term game, and it's not worth it.
Exactly.
It's never worth it.
No.
You always kick yourself for that one.
You do, and you can feel it. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
subtle, but you can feel when something's in alignment and then when it's compromising. So really being discerning with
Yep.
those pieces is important.
Listen to your gut.
Listen to the gut.
Yeah,
Yeah.
listen to the gut.
Yep.
My don't is don't stop taking steps forward. In my personal experience, every time I've done that, of course, the business comes to a halt, and it's so easy, like you mentioned, to find every excuse not to keep going.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
By the way, I love that you took a don't and made it a do with the
Yeah,
different-
yes, that's right. Now,
You did say you have lots of do's, so I like how you twisted that.
Yeah,
That was good.
thank you,
Yeah,
thank
very
you.
strategic.
and do take advantage of every opportunity to network. I've dreaded going to, you know, meetings or events at 7 o'clock at night after a long day of work, and just thought, that's the last thing I want to do.
Yeah.
And the person I met there has provided an opportunity that's changed my life.
And it's just
And
putting yourself out there.
Putting yourself
Which
out
is
there.
what we were
yeah.
saying, right? The more you
Yeah.
put yourself out there, the more opportunities you have for success.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. You guys, thank you guys so much for coming. I kind of already told you guys at the beginning, you know, this is going to be one of my fun podcasts because we get to talk about startups and you guys being startup. So I always love founders' story kind of concepts. So this was a special podcast for me. So thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it. I mean, I appreciate all my guests, but this one was just fun for me.
Yeah,
So,
we loved it too. Thanks for
good.
having us.
Excellent. All right, for everybody at home listening, watching, bedsidebusinessplan.com, right?
Yeah, there
Did
you
I
go.
get it?
Yeah.
Okay. You can order your book there. I highly recommend that book, this book. It's actually one of probably the best books. If you have just even an idea, it's an excellent book to actually just do on your own pace. That's what I love about it as well. So bedsidebusinessplan.com, or if you're in Canada, you can also do Indigo. Am I right?
Yep.
You're
Indigo
right.
chapters. Yep.
Perfect. So until next time, thank you all for listening. Quarter out.